record today's session because I know there's a few people that had to drop out last minute. You know, we're all trying to do so much at the same time. So I'm just going to record for them so that they have access to this later. But all right, let's dig right in. And blended learning, I think, is an initiative that, you know, especially Corey, so many of you are in Corey's department, so I know she is the queen of all things blended. And there's so many great strategies that we can incorporate into our classes as we go. And so let's take a look at some of those strategies. Really quickly though, I always like to start with some SEL. So what is filling your bucket today? What is draining it? Where are we at? The fun thing about these slides and these templates from Pear Deck is that it's just a really good way for us to get to know the kids, get to check in with each kid, even if we're not talking with them. And remember, Pear Deck can be asynchronous or synchronous. So you can do teacher paced or student paced so that you can meet the needs of all three groups of your students, whether they're A, B, or completely remote. Kind of looking here, beautiful weather, absolutely. I love fall weather. Hugging your kids. Oh geez, yes, we've got all the feels, all the emotions going on today, and that's okay. And so today we're going to familiarize ourselves with a couple of blended principles. Like I said, this particular slide deck has the most resources of all of my PD this week. So a lot of it is going to be, here's some things to think about, here's some things to utilize moving forward, but your goal today should be to find the one thing that is going to work and apply in your classroom. So again, we're not mastering all strategies in 30 minutes. We are finding the one nugget, maybe two if we're lucky. Determine how your students will practice and develop mastery, speaking of mastery, and reflect on how we're going to assess with our students. So again, I always use the takeaways with Pear Deck, which I think is just a great way, you know, to reduce our paper use, to give kids, you know, resources that they can walk away with, that they can utilize. And so that's a really nice feature of Pear Deck. There are 4 different types of models that I'm going to infuse into today's presentation. One is a la carte, the flipped classroom, which I think we've heard a lot of for a while, station rotation, and flex. And so we're going to go through what each one of those looks like and maybe give you a nugget or two to take away that you can incorporate into your class. So a la carte, giving students choice is really, really powerful in this chaotic world that they feel like they don't have a lot of choices. So if I were starting class today, one thing that I might do is say, okay guys, give me numbers 1 through 4. You can see that you guys can drag those numbers on your Pear Deck slide. And so tell me in what order you want to do today's activities. Do you want to play the review game? Do you want to watch the ed puzzle, participate in a discussion, or reflect in a journal on Canvas? And so students could move their numbers to tell me what things that they were planning on doing today and in what order. So welcome, Katja. It's good to see you. There's the Pear Deck code in the chat if you want to jump in there. And so it's kind of neat because then I can see if I do the stackable, so I can see each individual student. I can also stack your work. So I can see, okay, a lot of students actually want to play the review game. If I notice everybody wants to start by playing the review game, maybe we'll play as a full class. If I notice that students want to do all sorts of different activities, I might tell them to do the activities in the order that they want them to. So it's an a la carte. It's a menu that they get to choose from. And so, so they are going to demonstrate their knowledge or grow in a certain skill in a variety of ways. And sharing slides with them makes it really easy to utilize that. So choice boards, especially since we've been in the shutdown, have been like my go-to in terms of telling students they have to, you know, play tic-tac-toe. They have to get 3 in a row. And so I might have a variety of different activities that allow or encourage them to grow in an experience that they want to. So again, you know, this one was more for in the spring when we were completely remote and just trying to get them to go outside or do something interesting. You could do something where you've got a vocabulary column, you have a practice column, and then you have an assessment column. So students could choose to, you know, practice on Kahoot or Quizlet, They could choose to then record their voice either on Padlet or Flipgrid, and then finally they could choose to take a quiz or do an essay. So you can give students choice in different types of activities and really set up your choice board any way that you want. And the link that I have for you guys is a really great blog post that talks about all different ways to set up choice boards, which you'll have access to that link later on. Just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've choice board in any of your classes before. No choice boards. Well, can you not hear me? Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Audio is super glitchy. Okay, I'm gonna try to shut down some of my tabs here. As we know, sometimes that helps. Never a dull moment, right? So again, choice boards, it seems like a couple of you have incorporated choice boards before. It's a nice flexible way for students to get some autonomy in picking what they want to do, especially because we won't be seeing 60% of them on any given day. So when they're out of the classroom, they can utilize the choice board, and then when they're in the classroom, you could do a direct instructor, do a different type of lesson. And so another thing, I know a couple of you have been to another session where I've talked about this before, setting up different Google Meets or different breakout rooms for students who want to do different types of activities. Giving students voice and choice can be really helpful. So if they want to work on their own on an assignment, they might go to a silent Google Meet where, you know, their screens are off and they're muted. If they want to work quietly on something, maybe you'll have them work in this room where they can ask questions if they need it. Or if they want to be loud and be collaborative, they can click on this Meet. So all students, no matter where they're at, can participate. In Google Meet, you can have as many Google Meets open as you want, which is really, really nice. So utilizing Google Meet is much better than Zoom when you have kids in the same classroom. You won't get as much feedback too. All right, positives of a la carte. Well, again, student choice and voice is really important. Students can choose to demonstrate mastery the way that they want to, and it makes differentiation really easy. The drawback is that it's harder to assess. We as teachers have to keep track of kids who are in so many different places, and then it can take time to set up. So Bridget, thanks for jumping in. Here is the code in case you want to get into that. All right, so just out of curiosity, guys, if you could share with me, you know, what do you already know about blended? What are some things that you know? And feel free to unmute too. Can you guys hear me still? Okay, what do you know? Share with me, unmute. I feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like it's class. Come on, seniors, talk to me.
Well, Steph, I'll start.
I don't know anything.
All I really know is, or my idea of blended is that when students are in the classroom, they're getting the instruction and working with the teacher, and when they're outside, they're working on different assignments related to the instruction that was given with the teacher.
For sure, kind of like the AB model is set up for. And it's okay. Again, these strategies can be incorporated even if all of our students were in the classroom. So I love Laura saying it's individualized work. Yes, it's a lot of personalization. Beth, there's a lot of flexibility. Even if we were in 2019, if you can remember back to that time when all the students were in the same classroom, you can still incorporate blended learning. You have a handy multiple Google Meets at one time. I do not, Becky, but that would be a great video for me to make. So I will work on that too. I'm going to add that to my list today. But that idea that we can incorporate these strategies in any model of learning. And so I'm hopeful that there's a takeaway or two that kind of, you know, puts a light bulb for you guys on, so that you find things that work for you. And again, we are going to fail. This model is you know, the next couple of weeks is going to be exhausting, and it's probably not going to go perfectly, and that's okay too. Yeah, I've tried. Fail big. That's my attitude there. So learning in blended learning is online and face-to-face. Students pick the time. They might not be doing, if they're on their flex day, they might not be doing our work at 9 o'clock, even though it's their designated class period. They might be doing it at home. They might be doing it at school. Who knows where they'll be? They might choose the order, and they'll go at their own pace, which is really nice for some of our more independent workers who can fly through things that if they were sitting in class, they might be done with and bored, whereas then they can move on to other things. So there's a lot of steps to consider, and I've got a one-pager that you guys can take a look at. And again, it's one of those resources that will be sent to you, but it's just important to familiarize yourselves with these different resources, I think, because like I said, there should be one or two things that might apply to your specific classroom, even if the whole thing doesn't. The whole philosophy behind blended learning is that it's flexible so that it works for you and it works for your students. And so it's just finding what works. So if we were actually doing a blended lesson, when I designed this PD, this particular one was supposed to be asynchronous, meaning you were supposed to do it on your own. So one way to model blended learning is say, the instructions say here, watch this video from Edutopia and take notes on what you learned. So what I love about Pear Deck is that, so students could play the video right here, which we're not going to watch completely, but again, you can always go back and watch it. It's a really good video, but it's a short video. Then they can be taking notes in the little text box on the side. And then with takeaways, they'll get their notes back. So all the notes that they took from the mini lesson, that's that flipped model of the classroom. They're getting video content, they're learning that content, and then they can use those notes when they come back together with you to apply that information. So the flipped classroom, again, is something that I utilize all the time. I even am doing a flipped lesson today. So I'm doing a quick 5-minute video on annotated bibliographies. And I really want to make sure I have questions that are checkpoints along the way so that I know they mastered the content. And so students are going to watch the video, and then we're going to have 20 minutes of collaborative work time on what they've learned from the video. So it's practice, and then they apply it with me in a live format. Flipped classroom, some of the positives are that every student receives the same lesson. I think especially moving forward, we might have kids that get sick. We might have kids that don't show up. We might have kids that think it's an A day, but really it's a B day. And so when you've got a flipped lesson, you know that any student can go back and watch that video. The advantage too is our struggling students, they can go back and rewatch the video. When you create a video, you are creating a resource that students can use at any time, and they can use multiple times over. So students can rewatch those videos as needed. The drawbacks are students don't always have, if they're watching a video, they might not be able to ask their question in real time. So that can be a frustration and a drawback. Students might not watch the video, or, I think more importantly, it takes a lot of time for us to set up videos. So creating a database, I see a lot of people in the same disciplines here, two big groups, sharing your videos, creating, 2.1 and 2.3 and 2.4 and breaking up those lessons, and can really save time and make the collaborative process really important. So think about that if you're ever doing a lesson with your CLTs. Also, you can always create videos, like I'm creating a video right now by recording our recording our Zoom. I now have a resource in a video that is just me presenting that I can then share with another student. So I'm creating this resource. So you can create videos too and record what you're teaching with students live as a resource. So what blended learning isn't? I think a lot of people think that blended learning just means kids are pushed out of the classroom and that they don't do work on days that they're not present. I think in fact the opposite. Just as we talked about with the flipped classroom, sometimes students are doing more work outside of class than in, because when they're in class, they're doing the practice, you're answering questions, they're doing guided work, whereas when they're out of class, they're actually acquiring the content, showing or demonstrating mastery through assessments. So blended learning is a lot of different, it has a lot of different setups and a lot of different philosophies. And again, it's all about finding the principle and the ideas that work for you. So does anyone have a favorite? If you have a favorite blended learning resource, you can share it on the Padlet there. And what's really nice about, what I love about Padlet is that, you can post any, all sorts of different resources. Padlet's such a great way to make learning visible. And so I can even see right here, if I share my screen with you guys, I can see that Kasha's adding something. Catelynn Tucker is like the guru of all things blended. And when I think of D155 and I think of the guru of all things blended learning, I think we are very fortunate at Cary Grove to have Corey. Thanks, Katja. But we're very fortunate to have Corey with us as well. So moving forward here, we've talked about asynchronous and synchronous. I think everyone is so sick of those words. They're like a lot of syllables and even hard to say, but do you want students to be live with you? Do you want them to be not live with you? I think ultimately we'll probably be incorporating a little bit of both. I want to encourage people who are really nervous about next week to lean heavy on synchronous activities, so activities that are done at the same time at first. When you feel more comfortable, when you start to, have everyone feel like they're on the same page, that's when you can start to play with asynchronous resources or asynchronous activities. And another resource I have for you, again, there's too much information, but there is an asynchronous versus synchronous one paper which is shared with you guys in this presentation as well. So continuing, there are the D155, I think many of you have seen this before, that tech tools resource. We've got a huge list of all those different tech tools that can be really helpful to you guys in terms of thinking about, what to do when students are remote, what tools, can be helpful for you. And the most important thing is I am not advocating for you guys to try anything new, especially in the next 2 weeks. Don't think you have to learn 100 new tech tools to be successful. You have all the tools that you need, but be thinking about what do I want my students to do, and then how do I want them to do that? That's when you can start thinking about, am I going to use a Flipgrid? Am I going to use a Pear Deck? Am I going to use Kahoot? That's kind of where we're at. So Flippity, and this is something that I talked about in one of my last sessions too. Thinking about creating groups, Flippity.net is a really, really great tool. And I got the video is embedded for you guys. And what you can do is, I'm going to go to the demo page here. It's a really great spinner activity, which allows you to, pull students' names. You can break students into teams. There's all sorts of different fun things that you can do with your students in terms of that random name generator. So thinking about group and how you're going to group students can be really, really powerful too. So another really common thing that I know I'm going to be doing with our 40-minute periods is having about 4 different stations. Station rotation is one of the most common ways to blend a lesson. Station rotation means I might use Flippity and divide my students into 4 groups. Once I divide my students into 4 groups, I'm going to say, group 1, you're starting at station 1. Group 2, you're going to station 2. And all of this on one particular slide, I would have a Kahoot Reviews hyperlinked. I'd have a Padlet hyperlinked. I'd have a Google Meet hyperlinked. And then I'd have an Edpuzzle assignment hyperlinked. And you can even include hyperlinks into Canvas. So by putting everything on one side, I'm going to start my timer. And that will count down for me. And that at the end of 10 minutes, I will get back on Zoom and tell all the students it's time to rotate to your next station. So think about different activities that you want students to do, and you can utilize station rotation. What's nice about station rotation is that you get to talk almost one-on-one or in a small group with every single one of your students. Students receive direct instruction in station rotation, and sometimes teachers always say, like, I feel like I actually had more time in station rotation because you're working, students are in smaller groups, so they have more opportunities to ask questions. The positives of station rotation is that smaller groups elicit more conversation. Students are quicker to share ideas when they're in a smaller group. Teachers, we can connect and check in with our students, or we can conference with students. But the drawbacks is it's harder to monitor student progress. Students may skip a step or not complete something, and it can take time to set up. But again, it's all about building tools and playing around with these different models that can really help. And like I said, I really like doing here's our slide of what we're doing today. Here's who's in what group, let's go. And so students can do a really nice job with that.
Steph, can I stop you just for a second?
Of course.
I'm sorry to interrupt. With
No.
the station rotation, old school, I've done station rotation in my classroom, like physical station rotation.
Yeah.
You're talking virtual. It's funny, you're also doing that with the choice board too. It's kind of full circle. But with the station rotation, literally on a Canvas sheet, here are your 4 links. Group A, you guys are going to do this station first. Group B, you're going to do this, and then you literally like flip virtually. Is that what, like, okay, you've got 10 minutes now. Everybody who's in A go to B. Now everybody who's in B go to C. Like literally like that, and you're doing that virtually.
Yes.
So here's my question with that. And that makes sense. I got my brain around that. Are you doing the same thing with the kids physically in your classroom?
Yes, because kids can't really physically, shouldn't really be moving throughout the room.
No, I don't mean like that. But so like everybody is on the same Canvas page at home or at school. They can be in whatever groups you set up for them, Flippity or otherwise. And then you're like, okay, you 5 people are going to A, you guys are going to B, you guys are going to, and it doesn't matter if you're at home or at your school. So it's essentially a synchronous lesson where they're doing a station rotation. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you, but I wanted to understand it. That's all.
Can I blow your mind and tell you, you can also do it asynchronously. So you can have the kids at home do the same thing and be in their own group, or you can, you can have when they're at home, you could have a completely different lesson or activity. Maybe they're writing a paper when they're at home, but when they're in class, then they'll do the station rotations. So then the A-day kids will do it one day, the B-day kids will do it another day. You could pull in your remote kids on any day. You could have your remote kids. I'm probably going to keep my remote kids, my AK remote kids with the AK group, and my L through Z kids with the, like, for alphabet's sake, I think I'll forget, and I think they'll forget if I group them differently. So I'm going to do all A-day, all B-day kids, and I might just adapt it for my remote kids depending on,
what you're doing. Yeah.
So
thank you.
So
sorry
much to think about. No, that is the whole point of this whole session, is this is about you guys and what you need. And so I'm happy to stop at any point. Again, it's considering, Katja, this goes right to your question. It's considering how you're going to deliver that content. What is face-to-face? What is online? I think the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is, what do I absolutely have to do synchronously, and what do I have to do asynchronous, or what can I do asynchronously? So making sure that we get those must-have live direct instruct with our kids, which is important. We got to set that up. So that's the big thing to think about. And exploring more information about blended learning. Again, Catelynn Tucker is like the queen of all things blended learning. You'll have all these resources when we have time, which probably won't be until after Christmas, but that's okay. It'll be in your email. So there's that. And again, there's so many different blended learning models. It's all about finding what works for you. And especially with station rotation, I think trying it the first time was super daunting for me. And I know it didn't go as well as it should have, but that's okay. And just not being afraid to try some of these principles and ideas is really powerful. So when it comes to flex, that's going to be your big A-day, B-day day, where you've got face-to-face and then something completely remote. So something completely synchronous for one group of kids and something completely asynchronous for the other groups of kids. So in this model, I'm always going to keep my Mondays the same, synchronous for every Monday, because guess what? The fact that it rotates Mondays is going to be super confusing. So my big suggestion is keep Mondays kind of like how we've been doing Mondays. Here's all the information you need for the week. Here's my direct instruct lesson. Here's the one thing I want you to work on. So keeping Mondays the same that they've been, I think is going to be really helpful. But then being able to rotate those different sessions. The great thing about Flex, so you've got one group on, kind of one group off, is that you've got smaller groups of students, which gives students more opportunities to share. The drawbacks are when they're not in class, when it's their off day, they might be completely disengaged. But you know what? If kids are done with their work, then that's great too. So some more things to consider is, and I'm talking fast just to kind of get these ideas out so you guys can get to where you need to go. Remember, there's all sorts of different ways we can build assignments in Canvas. I think you guys are all experts, you know, the people I'm looking at in the room. Yes, you might be doubting yourself. I know you guys are experts at using these different resources in Canvas now. Remember, we've got all sorts of fun formative assessments, and like I love to do, app smashing, combining different tools can be really helpful too. So how are you going to summatively assess them? I think that's the trickier part. Now that kids will be in school, I think especially for foreign language, your assessments might be a little bit easier. And so maybe when students are in class, you're focused more on assessment. And when they're out of class, you're focused more on the formative piece. That might be a suggestion that I have particularly for the people that I have in this room, you know, even social studies too. And so having that assessment piece here might ease some of the worries that you've had this fall. And finally, just some more resources. I'm sorry I'm slamming you with resources. One thing that might be really helpful is this it's called a mix map, and it encourages you to see, hey, these are the things I absolutely have to do face-to-face, like my assessments. The things I need to do online, like an ed puzzle. You can draw this chart out, and it can be really helpful to help you to determine what can be blended, what goes in the middle, what could be face-to-face and online, and how might I incorporate that into my classroom. And so really quickly, I know I've gone super fast, just as a takeaway here, can you circle what you think you might use in your classroom moving forward? And then we'll wrap up here. So circle, oh, look at that big circle there. Flex days, great. I have flex days on there twice. I'm sorry. But yeah, you've got all sorts of different ideas. I can stack it so I can see where everyone's at. Flipped classroom, station rotation, flex days, all sorts of fun things. Wonderful. So you've got this blended learning handout, which covers everything that I've talked about super fast. So I hope your brains don't hurt. Mine kind of always hurts. So we'll go from there. How are you guys feeling about asynchronous, synchronous activities? Where are you guys at with that? Okay, love seeing where you guys are at, somewhere in the middle, and that's okay. We are going to continue to get better. Any ideas of how to do face-to-face assessments with remote students? Becky, that's a really good question. So now it's time for questions just in general. I think that how we've been doing assessments might be, you know, how it continues. I know students can cheat, especially in our foreign language, and that's the biggest frustration. You could have them do assessments where they record themselves on Flipgrid. So if they're doing like a paper assessment, or if they're doing a like a quiz, you could have them screencast their quiz so that you can see what they're doing and they can talk through, you know, the words and the language that they're saying. That might be the best way. Video might be the best way to do assessment with our remote kids. Something to think about. Other questions?
Steph, I'm not sure there's a good answer to this, but if we are using a flipped model and kids aren't accessing the flip the way we want them to, and so then when they come to school and that should be their practice day, if they're coming kind of without the flip, is it best to just kind of tell them to put in their earbuds and go do the flip, or what's your suggestion there? in terms of using your time, using their kind of precious time really efficiently.
That's what I would have them do. And again, unfortunately for them, it's like that natural visible consequence of, well, now you're losing time to work on your research project, or you're losing time to do X because you didn't do, what you're supposed to come before class. Edpuzzle, the kids love Edpuzzle. There's something about, I think, just having them be able to click multiple choice things, and Edpuzzle will track and auto grades in Canvas. So I would recommend, if you're going to do a flipped video, even if you don't add questions, run it through Edpuzzle so that you can track that students did it. And then you'll know too, when they come to class, you'll know, like, hey, I saw you didn't watch your Edpuzzle. You got to get started on that right away. And so that can be a visual accountability too. And I think you'll see that number might be high at first, but it'll reduce very quickly because there'll be that incentive.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about running them through Edpuzzle just for the tracking component, but that's a really good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Steph, I had a question. You said this, I just want clarity. So I noticed you had the red, blue calendar thing. I don't know, it was one of your slides at one point, but you also said you would suggest we start with all the kids synchronously.
I think so.
Okay, so when you say start with all the kids synchronously, you mean literally, and I'm just trying to get my brain around this again. So you've got your 10 kids in class, you've got your 20 kids that are Zoom calling in, and you're doing the same thing for, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, and then maybe switch over at some point to red team, you guys are doing this, blue team, you guys are doing this, and we're going to swap days on when you do what. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So I think just so that we survive at least the first week is kind of plan the way you've been doing. But, I think for a lot of us, and I know in my classroom, I start synchronous with everybody, and then, hey, you've got 20 minutes, you have to work on this, or this. And so I'll let them go and be asynchronous, and then I bring them back together anyway. So if you think about it, maybe the first 15 minutes are synchronous, and then you say, okay, everybody has this activity or this Edpuzzle to watch or this Flipgrid to do. Now you can break out. And then when you break out, then you can focus on the kids in the classroom where we're probably just going to do social emotional conversations. I think kids are going to be in shock next week. And so I think we just kind of have to take care of them there. So
one more question though. I kind of feel like so far this week, or this year, we've been doing sort of flipped anyway.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
For sure. For sure. And that's why I'm encouraging you to not really change what you're doing, because we're already doing so many of these principles naturally. But then we're kind of keeping everybody on the same similar pace, that sort of thing. So keep doing all the great things that you're doing. And then we can get even more creative with flip-flopping days and things like that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll get through it together, hopefully.
Can I just say I'm super impressed with Nora's Zoom environment she's got going there.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It just looks like you're at home.
Oh, well, thank you. As I tried to space my room out, I've become more and more boxed into my little corner over here. So I decided I had to like it.
I love it.
Thank you.
All right, friends, are there any other questions or things that I can do for you?
Sorry I came late. I had a hard time getting on, Steph.
No worries at all. And all these resources are going to be made available, including the videos and things like that, if you ever want to go back and watch or do anything like that. So
I do sound like my kids. Sorry I'm late. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
All right, guys, have a great rest of your day.